Hello there. Thanks for joining me today on Doctor Teach Me to Parent. We have a great program, and I think you're going to be very informed, very interested in what we're going to be talking about today. Unfortunately, it's a sad topic in a way, but it's a topic that still has hope, a topic that still involves the energy of individuals to overcome a point of difficulty in their life, divorce. And our guest today is Dr. Nigel Smart, who wrote a very interesting book. It's on Amazon. It's called Bouncing Back from Divorce, and has a very special orientation towards kids and children and boys, to making sure that they are not lost in the process of what takes place, and that there's recovery, and that there's a new life, there's a new future, and a new direction. So we're going to talk to Dr. Smart as he unfolds his book for us, and some of the concepts and the thoughts that he's had as he's walked this journey of divorce. And many of you have walked the journey of divorce. Many of you have walked it alone. Many of you have walked it with somebody who has been your mentor and has been your support person. That's good, by the way, that you have that. But if you've had to walk it alone, it's been a lonely road, and maybe today you can get a little hope. Maybe today you can get a little sense of direction. And so that's the purpose of our discussion today, and hope that will be helpful to you. Now, before we start, as usual, I have a little quote for you to put it in perspective, and this might just help you kind of think it through a little bit. A community, or let me just say a nation even, a community or a nation can be no stronger than its mothers and its fathers. So mothers and fathers sometimes go through a difficult time in life, but they come out stronger. And because of that, the community is stronger, the nation is stronger. Diversity and adversity creates stress, as we know. And we become stronger under such circumstances if we approach it. If we approach it in the right manner, we approach it with strength, we approach it with fortitude, and we approach it with wisdom, and we approach it with some creativity. So divorce need not be the devastating experience that it might be for many. And today we're going to see how we can not just overcome it, but bounce back from it. And I think that's a different concept. When you bounce back from something, you come back stronger. You come back with a might. And so that's why the concept of bouncing back from divorce. I like the topic, I like the title, and I like the author, Dr. Nigel Smart. So welcome, Dr. Smart, to our discussion today, and welcome to America, in a way. You're from England, and we have common roots, having been in Canada about the same time together, and so you've been a traveler. So in your experience of divorce, just put this into perspective, will you? You were married when and divorced when? Just give us a little bit of a framework.
The marriage that I've been that I divorced from recently, I married in '94. And then I got hit with the devastation in 2015, and we finally divorced 2 years later in 2017. So I've been 3.5 years now back as a single guy.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. So it's almost 4 years now since that's happened. Yeah. And would you consider yourself having bounced back, or are you still bouncing back? Help me understand that.
I think it's an interesting way you phrase that, Allan. Yes, I have bounced back, and a lot of people that know me will tell you that. But you don't bounce back and stop. You know,
that's right.
I believe in life as a continuum, and so it's a progressive development of, you know, the way you were stopped very abruptly, I should say. But then you rebuild and you bounce back. And it's not just you bounce once like a tennis ball.
Yeah.
The tennis ball bounces several times. And you continue to grow. And I think the real key here, and the message that I'd really like to share with your viewers, is it's not a one-stop process.
That's my point.
It's like going to the gym.
It's an ongoing, it's a developmental process, I would call it.
And it's continuous. If you want to stay in good health, you've got to keep going to the gym and working out. And I believe the same is true about bouncing back. You bounce back, but then you continue to grow. And the secret to being fulfilled is to continue to grow.
Yeah.
So
you, in your book, have what I refer to as the bookends.
Yes.
of your thesis of what you're trying to say. And the bookends are two messages. One is it's not your fault. There's light at the end of the tunnel. You got to look at it that way. It's not your fault. There's light at the end of the tunnel. And the other one is you don't give up. You never give up. So there's light
That's
at the end of the tunnel, and forgiving yourself, but making sure that you don't give up and that you keep going forward. How'd you come up with those two bookends?
Well, Allan, as I shared with you before we came on air, and you mentioned, yes, I am from the UK. I grew up in the north of England in a mining town. And one of the things that we learn in the UK is in England is, we've got the Churchillian spirit, or the Dunkirk spirit, as my father always used to say.
Sure.
You don't give in. You do not give in. You do not secede on your territory.
That's very English, never give up.
Never give up is what Churchill said. And I have got that in my blood, in my bones and everything. So, I mean, that was a part of me. In terms of the light, if you like, at the end of the tunnel, is you have to believe that there is a future. And I think if you believe that, and then you ask yourself the very basic question, okay, this has happened. I've got two choices. I either go away in the corner and cry about it, I become a victim, and it gets worse. Or you stand your ground and say, okay, it happened. Part of it maybe was my fault. Maybe it wasn't my fault. It doesn't matter. It's what are you going to do now? Because if you want your life to continue and to have a good life, you've got to ask yourself some very, very basic questions of what you want your life to be now and in the future. That's
we're a people, Nigel, we're a people that like to know what our future is.
Yes.
And what you're really suggesting here in your book is that there's light at the end of the tunnel, but we don't know what that light is. We don't know what's going to result. We don't know what's going to come to us. We don't know what this will result in. So we're walking blind. And a lot of people have trouble with that, have a hard time kind of looking at it from that perspective of being blind. They want to know.
I understand that. Listen, I understand that. But I'll quote a very famous son of California in President Ronald Reagan.
Yes.
He always said our best days are still ahead. So as Californians, maybe you want to hang on to that and say, okay, I agree with that. If our best days can be ahead, but I need to do something about it. And I need to ask myself, where am I now?
Yes.
What's right in my life? What's not necessarily wrong in my life, but what are the things I want to throw away from the way that I am now today? And who do I want to be in the future? Who do I want to be in 3 years? Not just for myself,
yes,
but if I've got a family, my children, and I know that's very important, and you like to focus on that.
Yeah. I like that section where you really talk about analyze your own personal strengths.
Yes.
You have strengths. You're going through a difficult time. That's true. You're going through a devastating experience, but you still have strengths on which you can draw and on which you can depend, to move forward in a favorable way. How do you size that up in your own experience?
Allan, I like to look at things this way. I like to look at a person or myself in this way is, what do I want from my health? What do I want from my relationships?
Yes.
What do I want from my career? What do I want from my financial side? And what do I want in my love life, maybe, in my romantic life? And then the sixth thing is, what do I want to do that's bigger than myself? How do I want to contribute? How do I want to
That's an interesting concept. Very important.
I want to give back. How do I want to give, whether it's charity or some philanthropic thing? And we can all believe me. You don't have to be a billionaire to be a philanthropic. You can do something in your local community. And when you see the benefits of a small thing that you've done and the feeling that you get back, that raises you up. That gives you confidence. That gives you self-worth. Your self-esteem is what's most battered in a divorce. You think
what I
that
have
you're
found in
worthless,
people,
and you have to build that up, Allan.
Yeah. What I found in people who divorce is often a external orientation. Where can I go? What can I buy? What can I do now? How can I change my life in some way? How can I find somebody new? It's all that external thinking. But you have kind of turned it upside down, and you look inside yourself. That you have
Allan,
personal strengths, you have internal strengths, you have experiences on which you can draw, you have abilities that maybe you hadn't really developed, but now you can in a kind of a different context. So you've
Allan,
kind of turned it upside down.
We all have the capability for that, and we just need to turn that on. And one of the things that I do when I coach people is I'll teach them, first of all, it's an inside game. It's what I call an inside game.
Sure.
It's like you've already won. You just have to decide in what way you want to win. Most people fail, if you want to call that, and that's not a term I like to use. I call it interim setbacks, because I don't like to use the word fail because it creates a negative emotion in your head.
Yes, it does.
What we're trying to do is empower people, Allan. And to empower people, you've got to be careful with your language. You've got to be creative, and you've got to look inside. We have everything we need in here. It's really about, am I going to take charge of who I am? To do that, we must know ourselves. So what I like to do with people is to do, as I say, I like to do this granular analysis where we sit down and we say, okay, these 6 things, where are we strong? In my personality, in my skill set, in my life,
yes.
How do I measure up on those 6 things that are the core things around which I want to build my future life? Then what I would do is then ask people, Allan, tell me about how you want your life to be. Design the ultimate life. Dream for a moment. Visualize what you want to be, how you want to be, and then do exactly the same exercise. And then what we do is, and I use this all the time in my tech business, we do a gap analysis. We look at the now and the future.
Yeah.
And we say, let's close that gap. What do we need to do in the middle? And that's the area for growth development. And we say, okay, we need to do, now we can build a roadmap, Allan, for anybody. We can build a roadmap and we can guide you there. You only have to make small changes every day, every week, every month. And then within a year.
And everybody has their own starting point, I assume.
I'm sorry?
I suppose everybody has their own starting point. Everybody.
Yes, they do.
Nobody starts at the same place.
Allan, it doesn't matter. It's not a competition.
No.
This is about you and how you want to live and what is going to make you happy.
And what will help you get started? Where's the starting point? Everybody needs that initial kick, that initial starting point.
You have to have the desire to want to change. And
there you are. That may be it.
You've got to have the desire to change. And usually, I'll be honest with you, you have to hit rock bottom. It's like a drug addict or an alcoholic. Usually they have to hit rock bottom before they say, enough already, I need to change. My experience of the divorce that I went through was, it was such a challenge for me. I was going to say a devastating experience, but I don't want to bring that back.
Sure.
It was so hard for me.
Yeah.
It took me about 18 months to actually put all the pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that...
If a person has a starting point in which you're now, suggesting, then the next step kind of flows, doesn't it? Kind of naturally.
It does.
It isn't a hard measure to work out. You got to have, but the hardest part is getting that starting point, and then starting down the path.
Yeah, you have to realize that if you want to be happy,
yes.
If Einstein said the same thing. If you continue to do the same thing over and over and over again and expect a different outcome, then it's the first step of it. It's the first moment of insanity. So if you accept that, people have to accept the fact, look, if I want a different life, then I need to change first. You can't expect everybody else to change.
Yeah.
You need to look at, as Michael Jackson said in his, in one of his hit songs, take a look in the mirror. Take a look in the mirror first, and look at yourself. Yes, there are some things outside that you might want to change,
Sure.
Allan.
That's why I
But
was
think if
placing
you
the
look at
emphasis
yourself-
upon that internal starting point. You got to start with yourself,
Yes.
not externally. I think,
That's correct.
once you have an internal starting point, you're going to work with yourself and bring about some change in yourself. Then changes start to flow externally as well. You referred to that in your book in terms of personal transformation. I think is the concept
Yes,
that you
that's right.
introduced. That to me, that's a critical beginning point. You have to
Yes.
look at yourself, change yourself, not look at everybody else and how everybody else should change and how
Right.
everybody else should do whatever you want them to do, but
That's
start
correct.
with yourself and bring yourself to a new place and to a new level and to a new beginning point.
Absolutely. And as I've said, the way to do that is you look at yourself, you write down everything very, very granular about yourself. You analyze yourself. This is what I do when I coach people, because a lot of guys, they really don't know where to start. And it's like, okay, let's have that conversation and let's actually go through that process with you and help them.
Sure.
Once people get guided, just like anything else, Allan, just like at the gym where you might have a personal trainer, once they get it, it's like, oh, okay, now I can get it all down, and I realize some of the things that are not right, the things that are not desirable for me.
Sure.
Because now I'm going to chart a new course for myself and a new course for my children and a new course for me and my family.
Yeah.
Without the other person.
Share a little bit about your own personal experience. What was the beginning point for you? Where did you have to kind of face the fact of life and do something about yourself in the beginning stages of this process of bouncing back from a traumatic experience, divorce?
Well, there are two things that I value, that I've really always valued in my life, and obviously my family is one of them. I have a pretty big family. I love my children, but they got damaged in the circumstances. They got damaged, particularly one of my boys got really. He was a 15, 16-year-old kid, and he was at that difficult age. A 16-year-old is as you probably know. It's a tough time for boys. They're not a man yet, that they're not a kid any longer, and they're wrestling with their hormones. And so, I butted heads with him just the same as I did with my father at that sort of age.
Sure.
So that was a difficult time. That was very upsetting for me. The wrangling that was going on because we had lawyers. Remember, I had businesses, and so we had attorneys for the business and attorneys for the divorce. So the two things were, obviously, your career was getting derailed, and that was a big piece of one's identity, because I've been a scientist for 30, 40 years. And so both of those things were being derailed. I felt I was being alienated from my family because of what was going on. Inevitably, the children never get divorced, Allan.
No, they don't.
They're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And they're the collateral damage. And
sometimes we do that by neglect, but that's not the intent.
No, it just as a result of the process that you have to go through. The way the courts handle things isn't the best. It wasn't a good experience for me. And
that's why you got to take charge of it.
Yes.
You got to take charge of it yourself. You can't let a court or somebody else make all your decisions.
Well, people make decisions which, let me tell you, you don't think are fair. But unfortunately, even though you have good, expensive counsel, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a fair ruling.
That's right.
And so you have to accept things in life. This is what life is about. You don't always get what you want, but maybe you get what you need, as the Rolling Stones said.
That's right.
And so those were the triggers for me. It was like, how much, I've got to arrest this downward spiral in my life, because the identity of Nigel was being erased.
I like that concept, because it is a downward spiral.
It is.
And you have to take charge of it. You have to arrest it, to use your word, because you can't just let it take its own course or let somebody else control it, whether it be the court or
that's right,
or the mother or relatives or whomever. You got to take charge of that downward spiral and stop it and redirect it.
you do go through a period of free fall, and I think that occurs because I'm a very directed person. I put structures in place because
Yes.
of the way I've been trained scientifically. So I'm used to structure and I understand things. But when you have a brain like mine and you still are out of control, and it's like your automobile, it's like driving a Ferrari. People call me a Ferrari
Sure.
or a McLaren, but I'm driving a Ferrari, and then all of a sudden the throttle cable gets stuck on, and I can't stop it. It's pretty scary,
Yeah.
But one of the other things I'll share with you. I think I told you I like to use stories to emphasize the point. You asked me about how do you change things, or what makes you change things. I do vintage sports car racing, and you're hurtling on a track, Allan, as if you say you were on a Pocono Raceway or on the Indy track, and you've got this big concrete wall in front of you, and you're hurtling towards it 100 miles an hour. A rookie, when he turns into the corner, looks at the wall. He brakes very, very hard, mind you.
Yes.
He looks at the wall. And he struggles to get the car around the turn. And if he's not a very good driver, he may hit the wall. And an experienced driver never looks at the wall. He points his sight in the direction that he wants to go. And he puts his foot down and he steers the car around, and he does it quick. He does it fast.
We call that focus.
So the metaphor here is, which really piggybacks on the point you just made, or point that you just asked me about, is once you decide I've got to do things, you've got to look at where you're going. You can't look at your wall, otherwise you will crash into it.
That's right.
You will crash into the wall. You look around the corner. You look around the thing that you're trying to avoid, and you focus on where you're going, and then you can put your foot down and power through things. And I like to teach people that. I like to share people because they get it. They understand, if they watch NASCAR or anything, that going around the corner, they'll hit the wall. I use that as a metaphor for life. Don't look at where you don't want to go. Focus on where you want to go, and then build a strategy in to get you there.
I like that concept, because in the grieving process of divorce, it's easy to just kind of look at yourself and get off track, not focus properly.
That's correct.
You say, look at the wall where you don't want to go, because you don't want to hit the wall. You want to go beyond the wall and go around it and move forward. And it's hard in a grieving process to keep that focus and to keep that forward motion going.
It is. And so there are things that you have to do. What you're talking about is the grieving process. Listen, you're going to go through an element of the grieving process.
Yes,
absolutely. But what you can't do, there's a difference between grieving, Allan, and pity party. The pity party is not going to get you anywhere. I've been in a pity party, and most people that I know have. The issue is, and my son reminded me of this, this is a principle I taught my boy when he was 17, 18, my first son. I said, look, you can be anything you want. You can have down days, but you can't stay there. Your character will not allow you to be in a negative situation indefinitely. The way you're built, the way your mind should force you, it should allow you, if you like, the luxury of feeling sorry for yourself for a little bit of time.
What was his response to that?
After that, you've got to get out. You've got to come on and you've got to take control. In our case, we're men. Act like a man and step up.
I like that. How did he handle that? How did he respond to that?
My son?
Yes.
When my divorce went through, this is my older son, he turned to me and said, "Come on, Dad, remember what you told me?"
He gave it back to
you. Here's the student teaching the professor again, And I said, yeah. I said, you're absolutely right. Thank you for reminding me of that. Listen, we're human beings, Allan, and we get caught up in life. Sometimes we need stimulus from the most unexpected place to actually just remind us of what it is that we're all about.
Sure.
And in this case, for me, it was one of my sons turned around and said, "Dad, you remember what you told us? You can't stay there. Come on."
Yeah.
Set the example. And it was great. It was great in another way, because it was like, oh, you actually did listen to me after all.
Sounded to me like your son kind of served as a little bit. Your son served as a consultant to you a little bit. Kind of gave you some of your own medicine a little bit.
I find that amusing, but also heartening, because, as I say,
sure,
he has that built into his operating software in his head, and so as a parent, I know that when he meets his challenges in life, that will kick in for him. And as a parent,
that's
I
right.
want my children to be equipped with the skills and knowledge to be able to overcome their own challenges in life.
Right. Hey, we're going to take a break here for a minute. You've been talking very well and give you a little break. But when we come back, I want to ask you the question regarding, keep on this topic of the kids. You know, they seem to serve as a motivator,
Yes.
for we as parents when we're going in a different direction. And sometimes we neglect to consult our kids. We neglect to discuss it with them. We neglect to hear what they think and hear how they organize this whole thing of divorce in their own life. And they're really a resource to us that we often neglect. So I want to come back and comment about that in terms of how did you really benefit from using your kids as a resource of ideas and suggestions and a new direction for your life, because it's a team. It's a teamwork that you put together. So we'll take a break and come back in just a few minutes. Thanks for joining us. Dr. Nigel Smart. All right, welcome back to Dr. Teach Me to Parent. And today we are interviewing our guest, Dr. Nigel Smart. Comes to us today from the Philadelphia area, but originally coming out of England, and went through a difficult divorce situation. And as a result of that, formulated some ideas and recovered. And what he refers to is he bounced back. And then put that into a book entitled Bouncing Back from Divorce. And today we're talking about his experience and writing of this book and guidance and suggestions that he has for all of us when we go through a difficult time. This isn't just information that would help you through a divorce. This is information that would help you face any trauma or any stress point in your life, any difficult downturn in your life. There are some principles here that need to be implemented and followed for you to come out on top, in which he then refers to as bouncing back. So you come out on top of this thing and not get covered by it. But when we took a break, I asked him the question, kids are motivators. Kids often have wise counsel for us. Kids often tell us some very important information that we need to remember and we need to take note of, and we need to consult our kids. Dr. Smart, were your kids helpful to you in this process? Did you consult them, and did they have ideas that you benefited from?
I think so. Some of my children were quite young. I have quite a spread in range of my family. It's been building for quite a number of years, in fact, decades. So I had young ones, and then I had teenagers, and then some guys in their 20s. One of the things that I learned was that you feel and you're worried as a father that you're going to lose your family, that you're going to lose your children. It is the biggest believe me, as a father, it's the biggest trauma experience that you go through. A property, career, and everything else, and assets, that's one thing, but you can get those back. If you lose your family, that is much more far-reaching. I just want to emphasize, in the title of the book, I have two very, very important power words that I want to stress, because you mentioned bouncing back from divorce. That's a piece of it. But the rest of the title is with vitality and purpose. And I put those two words in especially deliberately, Allan, because I wanted people to say, you don't just bounce back, you bounce back with vital, with power, with gusto. This is not a, bounce back to where you were. It's no, you come back stronger. And I want people to understand that. The purpose part of it is you want to give yourself a reason to bounce back, a reason to succeed, a reason to be vital. And so, this is why I ask people to understand what their why is. Why do you want to do that? Why are things like this important to you?
I like
so
that.
Yes,
I like
to answer your question, these principles are common and can be applied to any trauma situation, not just divorce. So you're absolutely right. I was beginning to tell you that, one of the things that is ingrained in my psyche is you never give up. There's always something that you can get out. One of my very, very good friends.
That's that bookend we talked about. You never give up, and you always have light at the end of the tunnel.
You never give up. One of my very good friends, she taught me along the way, and I quote her, not by name, but it is in the book. And she taught me, Nigel, out of every situation, out of every supposed black cloud, there is a positive or a silver lining that you can take out of things. Sure. It doesn't seem to be immediately obvious, but let's just take COVID, for example. People have been devastated by COVID, but I would argue that one of the positives that's come out of COVID is it's brought people back together to some extent. To actually, there's a lot of people around now that are saying to me, I was in the rat race. I've been forced to spend more time with my family. Shocker. And I like it. And so now you have more communication going on than we've ever had before. So there's an example of a very extreme situation that we've all been facing this last 12 months.
I like
but it's
that.
Something that can be very, very motivating. And what it tells you is, if you can deal with this, if we can overcome this, if we can take that and have built something very, very positive here, then what else can't we? There's nothing that we can't achieve.
That's right.
Because now we've got a very, very strong foundation, the thing that should be something that we build on. Yeah. So yes, one of my sons, Matthew, reminded me, Dad, when I was having one of my black days, I was having a bit of a personal pity party, as I call it. And he said, Dad, remember what you told me? And I said, well, what was that? Because I've taught you a lot of things. He said to me, Dad, you taught me it's all right to have a bad day, but you can't stay there. And you've been there long enough. You've been there a couple of days.
Good for him.
Come on.
Good for him. He kind of woke you up, didn't he?
Let me explain the reason why that resonated so strongly is, as a parent, you hope that you're influencing your children in the right way.
Yes.
You hope you're teaching them something. That was a very, very, very strong message, that something that I had planted as a seed decades before had actually taken root. And he had the temerity to actually come back to his father and remind him that, Dad, you're not walking your talk. So yeah, there's a very poignant example of how one of my sons said to me, had a very positive effect on reminding me who I was and what my principles are.
Yeah.
The thing that's very, very important is...
We often overlook that, don't we? In the sense of we have kids who are wise and can be helpful to us, but we neglect to bring them into the problem, bring them into the solution, bring them into the growth process, because they grow too as they come into our situation, to our problem. They also benefit from that. Say, in your book, you talked about the whole bouncing back concept of being a marathon and not a sprint.
That's right.
Which I gather you're really saying this is a long process. This isn't something you do today and you stop tomorrow or the next day or whatever. It's an ongoing lifestyle. This is
Yeah, I think that's the message that I want to communicate to people, Alan. It's look, I think especially in California, where I mean it's a fitness lifestyle mecca. We all know that, okay?
Sure.
I mean you tend to set the health and style standards for the rest of the country. Sure. We know that if we want to be healthy and have a lifestyle, we exercise, we eat carefully.
That's right.
We don't do that just one day a
That's
week.
right.
We do it as a continuum. So why don't we apply that same principle to how we want to live the other part of our lives? Which is so. It's a case of look, you're not going to fix it and then everything's going to be hunky dory.
Yeah.
You're going to fix it to a point, and then it's going to be a continuum of applying the same principles to stay, one, in condition, but two, life changes. Look at this year again. Life changes. And unless we grow, Alan, unless we become more adaptable, and unless we get into a habit, again, I'm talking habits and rituals, unless we get into those habits of change, then we're not going to be able to deal with the next problem that comes along. Because life is going to throw problems up.
I always look at it this way. You have to stop a bad habit before you can start a new habit. So you have to understand what your bad habits are, what contributed to the breakdown, so to speak. And then you can start some new habit patterns. And then you have to stick with them and just pursue them and make them work.
And I'm a great believer in what we call the accountability coaches.
All right.
Your accountability coach can actually be your child. Your accountability coach, it can be, Dad. You're gonna do 50 push-ups every morning, and you're gonna lift so many pounds. So you're down in your basement or in your garage where you've got your weights. And the kids are going to come in and they're going to actually grade you. They're actually going to say, come on, Dad, I want to make sure you did them today. Because if I don't, we will find a reason. Sure. Oh, I was busy today. I'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and then I'll do it the next day. And listen, Alan, we all do this. I do it.
Yeah.
But on a lot of the things that I have, and this is what I try to teach people, is I have accountability coaches that that make sure that if I'm going to do something, whether it's in divorce or fitness or anything else, they're going to hold me accountable. In business, am I going to, just as an example, how this is transferable. In business, if I'm in sales, how many calls am I going to make? Do I make 100 calls a week or 120 calls a week?
Sure.
So if somebody holds you accountable, you're more likely to actually implement that.
That is always proven. That's always proven to be a good way to make changes in your life. Is to have that accountability person in your life and be held accountable. And sometimes you have to do it to yourself, but you can do it.
You can do it.
You wrote this book now, Bouncing Back from Divorce, and it's available Amazon, right?
Amazon, Kindle right now, yes.
Now,
in 90 days, it'll be out on paperback, but right now it's just on Kindle.
On Kindle, but it'll be out in paperback, so they can get it through Amazon. But would this be a book to be read by somebody starting the divorce process, or would it be helpful for even somebody who is 2, 3, 4 years beyond?
Both, because and I'm confidently I can say that to you, both, because I've got people that I'm working with that are at both ends of the spectrum. And as you pointed out, what we're trying to do here is empower people with principles that they can apply not only to divorce, but also the principles that they can apply to any tragedy or any adverse situation in their life that requires them to pivot. That's a word for 2020, pivot, which means change direction to respond to a negative stimulus. So we've had a negative stimulus with divorce. We're going to pivot. We've had a negative stimulus with how COVID has affected us all. We have to pivot and create a new strategy to how we deal, because life has to go on.
Sure.
And we have to be confident about how we go on. Otherwise, we're not being true to ourselves.
I like that. Say, we're going to end here. Let me give you a quote, and maybe you can make a comment about this. The quote as we bring our program here to a conclusion today. There is no better medication than a mother's kiss and a father's hug. Comment about that. I'm sure you have had a lot of hugs with your kids. You're the father hug. You seem to be a person who would hug.
It gives you a sense of purpose. You know, I hark back to the two words, the motor words, as I call them, in the title. When you get a hug and you can feel the love in that hug, that gives you a purpose to overcome any tragedy, any circumstance that you want. It provides the fuel, the power. It provides the impetus for you to power through. And to me, there's no greater joy in life to receiving the kiss from the girl who makes your motor run in the morning.
And that beautiful.
I think
that's well said.
Of a woman and the love for the children that they give you the motivation. I think that I often say to friends, the thing that I've missed most in the last 3 or 4 years, or the last 5 years, is I don't have my next partner yet, and I miss waking up and having this first smile in the morning, because I think that's the most magical feeling for a guy in the world, to know that somebody thinks that highly of him. It provides all the impetus to overcome everything in your life and to create a life of purpose and fulfillment for you all as a family. So that would be my response to that.
Well, you capture that in your book very well, and I appreciate that. So, hey, get a hold of his book, Bouncing Back from Divorce, and go to Amazon. It's on Kindle now, and it'll be soon available on paperback. So if you're in the divorce process at any point, past, present, future, this is a book to use and to benefit from, and maybe it's a little bit of a manual, for you to kind of guide your life through this whole process. So thanks for joining us today. And Dr. Smith, you've been great. Thank you for being part of our community today and part of our conversation and hopefully part of our growth process that we're all going through. Thank you for your contribution. Okay, bye for now. Thank you.
Bye-bye.